What's up guys, my name is Brandon and the iPhone 6 will be turning 5 years old in 2019 and this phone has fared very well over the past few years, but should you really be buying one this year? As the first iPhone to come in both a standard size and also a plus size, the iPhone 6 would go on to become the best selling smartphone ever, selling more than 220 million devices worldwide. It wasn't just because of the newly introduced plus size, the iPhone 6 was a major design overhaul from 2013's iPhone 5S. iPhones went from looking blocky and fat to sleek, modern, and slim. This design change alone made the upgrade from the iPhone 5S an easy decision for many people, myself included. This was the first time we got a protruding rear-facing camera, and originally people were kind of upset at this move. They didn't really like how the camera, stuck out on the back, but it's not such a huge deal to most people these days because, of course, every iPhone since the iPhone 6 has also had a protruding camera where it kind of just has a camera bump on the end that, protrudes out from the actual shell of the iPhone. It was also the first time the power button was on the side of the device instead of on the top, as well as the volume rockers going from circular to rectangular, making them much bigger and easier to press. Both of these changes were also very massive just in the way you use the phone in everyday life. It just made everything so much better, and pretty much everything changed with the iPhone 6. Now yes, we do just have a 4.7-inch display with a resolution of 750 by 1334, but honestly, if you're looking to buy the iPhone 6, you probably don't care too much about the resolution. Now the screen size, you may be kind of concerned about if you're coming from a newer device and you're trying to downgrade to an iPhone 6, but honestly, the screen is not too small, and this comes from somebody that uses the iPhone XS Max as my daily driver. I still don't think this display is too small. This phone is just great to use with one hand. It's very easy to hold, with one hand. It's very easy to use with just one hand. Obviously, you can't do that very much with the iPhone XS Max or some of the other plus size phones. And watching YouTube videos and movies on the iPhone 6 is just a decent experience. I mean, it's nothing special. If you haven't used a newer iPhone, you'll probably be kind of pleased, I guess. But if you have, you'll likely notice mediocre quality and just wish to upgrade to a newer iPhone because the quality is just not that great. Again, it's not bad. It's not like a terrible experience like you're watching it on a flip phone or something, but it's just not great compared to nowadays standards. Pretty much every video is in 1080p minimum, and you just don't get 1080p, actual resolution on the iPhone 6. So it's kind of hard to really get good quality on the iPhone 6 when watching movies or YouTube videos. You also won't get any kind of water or dust resistance with the iPhone 6. So if you, tend to get your phone wet from time to time, if you take it in the shower, if you get it, near a pool, or if you just get dust in like the ports down here or anything like that from being in your pocket a lot, you don't get any kind of IP67 or IP68 rating at all with the iPhone 6. So definitely consider that before purchasing something like this. Now, even in 2019, the iPhone 6 is still receiving regular software updates, just like the brand new phones. And that alone is very impressive for a 5-year-old device. I mean, just getting software updates in general is impressive for a 5-year-old device, but that's not even the best part. These software updates aren't just software updates just to update and fix bugs and things like that. It actually boosts the performance on older phones like the iPhone 5S and the iPhone 6. This iPhone 6 is on iOS 12 and it is the fastest and smoothest it's ever been in its entire life cycle. And that's what iOS 12 did. Apple really focused on the older devices with iOS 12. I mean, that's very impressive because that means this phone is going to last so much longer. It already has lasted a lot longer than people thought because it just boosted performance and it made it more usable in day-to-day life for people with the iPhone 6. Because obviously iOS 11 for the iPhone 6 was kind of a train wreck and a lot of people traded in their iPhone 6 because the performance was so bad, but then it got back to being better with iOS 12. So super impressive once again for a 5-year-old device. Now yes, the speed on the iPhone 6 is faster than it's ever been before, but that still does not mean it's fast in today's standards. I mean, it's the speed on this thing is still pretty abysmal compared to something like even the iPhone 7 Plus, which just came out a year after the iPhone 6. There's a big difference in performance between the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 7 or the iPhone 7 Plus. And the performance on the iPhone 6 even gets dominated by something like the iPhone SE or the iPhone 6S, which came out pretty much around the same time, and you can pick up for pretty much the exact same price as well. And the terrible performance on the iPhone 6 mainly comes from having only 1 gigabyte of RAM and also rocking Apple's A8 chip. Now in comparison, both the iPhone SE and the iPhone 6S, which again practically are the same price as the iPhone 6, have double the RAM at 2 gigabytes, and they also have Apple's A9 chipset, which offers 70% better performance and 90% better graphics over that A8 chip, which is in the iPhone 6, which again, massive difference when using them side by side. And again, things only get better with the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. And when I talk about the performance, I mean, navigating around the iPhone 6 is still pretty smooth. I mean, just going from page to page and things like that. But when it comes to loading up applications, actually fully loading games and, even social media applications, it's really slow. Some of the games on the iPhone 6 are just choppy. It's just not a great experience at all, especially something, like an online game like PUBG. It's just really choppy. You lag a lot. It's really just hard to play on the iPhone 6. And by the way, to all of you Fortnite fans out there, unfortunately, you cannot play Fortnite on the iPhone 6. The minimum requirement is the SE or the 6S or higher. So yeah, the performance is bad, and you can really see this when you compare it to something a little bit newer like the iPhone 8 Plus, and then even compare it to something like the iPhone XR. Obviously, the difference in speed is going to come and just day-to-day things like opening applications, playing games, multitasking, going into the control center, every just day-to-day things. And I'm not saying you can't use the iPhone 6 in 2019. It's usable, but it's just going to take a lot of patience. I mean, you're going to have a lot of patience to actually use the iPhone 6 in 2019. And again, and that's mainly due to the only 1 gigabyte of RAM and that slow Apple A8 chip. Now, as for the software-based features, the iPhone 6 does not have any of the fancy features like portrait mode or 3D touch or anything like that. Now, you can press and hold on things in the control center, but it's not pressure sensitive, and it's not even like haptic touch really on the iPhone XR. So not a great experience. I really wish we had that on the iPhone 6, but you do not get that. And of course, we don't have portrait mode on the iPhone 6 because we're rocking a single 8 megapixel camera, and overall, the camera quality is just not very good. Like, you can tell that the image was taken from an older phone, especially when you compare it side by side to even something like the iPhone 7, which of course has a 12 megapixel camera. You can shoot video at 1080p at 60 FPS on this phone, but it cannot do 4K at all. And just like with the pictures, the video is not very good either. Especially when I personally only shoot video on my iPhones in 4K, going back to 1080p on this iPhone 6 when I was testing out, it's just worse, and even worse when it's an 8 megapixel camera. So it just wasn't doing it for me. The overall quality, the optic image stabilization, everything, it was shaky. The quality wasn't great. The highs were overexposed, the lows were underexposed. So it was just really bad when I'm used to shooting in 4K. And the front-facing camera is kind of a joke. I mean, it's only a 1.2 megapixel camera. It's a 720p camera. So if you are a fan of taking selfies a lot on your iPhone 6, you're going to turn out really grainy. You're not going to be looking good at all in your Snapchat selfies. So I would definitely not get this phone if you take a lot of selfies, because that front-facing camera is just terrible. And if you are a big fan of taking selfies and you're on a budget, I would look at something like the iPhone 7 or the iPhone 7 Plus, because with that phone, you go from a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera to a 7 megapixel camera, and it's also a 1080p camera in the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus versus the 720p camera in the iPhone 6. So you guys should know that makes a big difference, that alone. So yeah, if the camera and the video quality is a big deal to you, the iPhone 6 is not great at it, and you will be disappointed if you buy one. Now, another thing that might disappoint you with the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus is the battery life. Now, the iPhone 6 has an 1810 milliamp hour battery, which isn't bad by nature, but the iPhone 6 only gets me about halfway through the day before having to charge it up again. So that means that if you wanted to go out for the day and explore with your iPhone 6 and take pictures, you better bring a portable charger, because you're going to be having to charge your phone up multiple times. I mean, I have to charge it twice a day when I'm not even doing intensive things like taking pictures, taking videos, and maybe using GPS if you're traveling or something like that. So I can't imagine if you're out doing that. You're definitely going to want to have a portable charger, because the battery life is just not great on the iPhone 6, especially when it comes to standby time. Overnight, if you don't charge it, you're going to lose like 20 to 30%. It's really bad. Now, when I say it's really bad, I am comparing that to some of the newer phones and the newer standards. Of course, if you're coming from an iPhone 5 or 5S or even older than that, the battery life is going to be better, but still, it's just not that great, especially when you could just pay like $100 more and get at least double the battery life. And this comes from an iPhone 6 with a battery capacity of 94% after almost 5 years. And I'd say that's probably better than most people with an iPhone 6, unless they got their battery replaced. But 94% is really solid to still have on such an old phone, again, with the original battery intact. So yeah, even compared to other iPhones with home buttons like the iPhone 7, 7 Plus, and the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, the iPhone 6 battery life is just terrible. And speaking of that home button, this is another thing to consider before purchasing any iPhone in 2019. The home button and Touch ID are great, but gesture controls and Face ID are just much more modern and accurate these days. You also don't have an extra moving part that could break with time. And that's one thing that I hate about home buttons in general. I hate having to worry about them, breaking. I had that multiple times with my iPhone 5S. I went through 3 different iPhone 5Ss because the button, you could just like press and you can almost hear like that was old. It just kind of pushed down but didn't push down all the way, and I had to get one replaced. The others I kind of just dealt with. The iPhone 6 is starting to feel that way as well. I can kind of feel the button kind of loose just from using it so much. So that's one thing to consider as well. You don't have that extra moving part and that extra, possible replacement down the road. Now, obviously Apple doesn't sell the iPhone 6 anymore, but you can pick one up in great condition from eBay, from Facebook Marketplace, or Craigslist for about $150 or less. Now that is very cheap for an iPhone, but once again, you get what you pay for. And in my opinion, the iPhone 6 is just simply a bad investment in 2019. And it's even a bad investment if you're coming from something like the iPhone 4, 4S, 5, or 5S. It's still a very bad investment. The resale value of the iPhone 6 is only going to go down with time, and plus, you may not even be able to use the iPhone 6 on the next version of iOS. iOS 13 may not even support the iPhone 6, so that is another thing to strongly consider. And the reason it's probably not going to be supported in iOS 13 is, again, because of that 1 gigabyte of RAM. That is just such a huge block for me and pretty much anybody that knows anything about phones. 1 gigabyte of RAM is just not going to do it. I mean, I feel like the bare minimum is 2 gigabytes. So if you have a very small budget for an iPhone in 2019, if you're looking to purchase a new iPhone, whether that's downgrading or upgrading, and say your budget is under $200, I would pick up an iPhone 6S or a 6S Plus. I would completely avoid the iPhone 6. I would even rather have the iPhone SE over the iPhone 6, but I would rather have the iPhone 6S or the 6S Plus over either the SE or the iPhone 6. Now, an even better recommendation for a budget iPhone purchase in 2019 is the iPhone 7 Plus. And I made a video on this a few months ago as to why it's the best phone to buy in 2018. And this is still true for 2019 as well. If you just spend like $100 or $150 more, you can get an iPhone 7 or 7 Plus, which is just night and day better than the iPhone 6S and 6S Plus. Not to mention the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus will continue to be supported by Apple's software releases because of that powerful A10 chip it has, as well as 3 gigabytes of RAM. So all in all, do not buy the iPhone 6 in 2019. And if you are currently watching this on the iPhone 6, I know there's probably some comments down there right now that say watching this on an iPhone 6. So if you have an iPhone 6, I'm talking to you, you should definitely look to upgrade soon. I would say soon as in like the next couple months, unless you're fine with using the iPhone 6 or 6 Plus right now, unless you just have no issues with it at all, then I guess keep it, but you really don't know what you're missing out on. So if you don't upgrade soon, I would definitely upgrade when the 2019 iPhones get released. So you should start saving up right now. Again, just think about the value you got out of the iPhone 6 over the past 5 years. You got your money's worth. Now it's time to get another phone to keep for many years and get your money's worth as well. So yeah, there you have it, guys. That is whether or not you should buy an iPhone 6 in 2019, as well as some of my other recommendations for what you should buy if you are on a budget. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also make sure to subscribe. I will be doing more should you buy videos in 2019. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon.